Before I continue, spoiler warning, spoiler, 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 I'm going to be spoiling the Halls of Arden Vul. I'm also going to be spoiling my campaign. If you're watching this, I assume you're a game master interested in this or whatever, but if you want, at any point, if you want to be a player, do not watch. If you have any chance of being a player, do not watch, because this dungeon is amazing. Please do not spoil this for yourself. So, in brief, I ran the Halls of Arden Vul mega dungeon with a homebrewed version of Shadowdark. It lasted 153 sessions over the course of 335 days, so that's 11 months. That averages out to be about 0.46 sessions a day. We probably did about 85% of the whole dungeon. We had over 30 unique players, and even get to brag that one of the characters in the first session was also in the last one.
Okay, so I'm Ed. I'm playing Kalamanos, fortune teller. He's a seer. He's from the capital.
I'm Ed. I'm playing Kalamanos, level 7 seer.
Our highest character?
Battle Sister Julia Wraithslayer, 8th level War Priestess of Ardenia, if we want to go through the full.
Across the entire campaign, we had over 100 fatalities. That includes our NPC hirelings, militia people, as well as player character deaths. And I'm also throwing in resurrected people as kind of deaths. So before I get into sort of the recap of the best moments and my lessons, I wanted to kind of talk about the campaign process, the procedure, sort of give a broad overview and sort of what I did to prep and the tools that we used to play. Okay, but just in case you don't know it, Arden Vul is a mega dungeon set in a ruined, scholarly, religious city atop a 1,500-foot cliff face, and involves a vast 24-layer network of levels that run inside its cliffs. It features an extremely deep and rich lore, self-referential history, and verticality all across these levels, with literally, I think, 4 different types of teleportation networks inside of it. It's got goblins, gladiator arenas, vampires, demons, undead aliens, and more. Think like Dark Souls lore with a Roman/Byzantine coat of paint on it, and then the expedition to the Barrier Peaks. Okay, so this is the kind of dungeon that wears its love of history and historiography like a bloody badge of honor. The dungeon reveres the simple truth that it's a miracle anything survives at all over the time, as natural forces and newer cultures just simply write over or erase what we once deigned to believe was permanent. So this was going into the mortar of my campaign. So I prepared an uncaring world. I want to show a world that is losing the war against entropy. I know it sounds a little dramatic, but I really wanted to show that uphill battle of keeping records, keeping tabs on things. It's really hard. Just how easy, how frankly seductive it is to just forget, to mindlessly not write something down, and then it's gone. So there would be no incentive for players, no XP carrots for session write-ups, no extra luck for mapping or shot calling. Forget about getting a bonus rumor for onboarding new players with the lore so far. I would merely provide infrastructural support in the form of pinned posts or new threads or channels in the Discord, but anything contained wherein is entirely player-owned and operated. I would make one really good player's document for onboarding, and that's it. Nothing else. Outlining the principles and assumptions for this game, as well as all the character creation options and stuff like that, and just really go above and beyond. Yeah, so the principles and campaign assumptions will be linked in the doobly-doo, but just in general, my principles and assumptions were heavily based off of like Cairn and other NSR games. There's no pre-prep story, fight dirty, a fair fight's for suckers, wise words can win a battle before it starts, but just in case, have a backup plan and character. Default to context and realism over numbers and mechanics for how things should work, but when in doubt, you can always ask, and just kind of expect me to be fair-handed in my approach in portraying the world. Dangers will be reasonably telegraphed, NPCs will be realized people, and you can expect me to roll attack rolls in the open. Okay, so because this was an open table campaign and Arden Vul has such a rich world in it, I knew I wanted a campaign to match those two things rather than just, legit playing Shadowdark by the book. So stuff that facilitates that style. So I won't go over everything that I've done, but the things that I was working on was custom ancestries that match the worlds. I would modify some classes and allow some additional classes. I would not share luck by default. I would use OSC XP following fighter level progression. I would use the Enduring Wound checks from one of the Cursed Scrolls, and I would also roll your D4 down die in secret. And I just want to say, like, in spite of all of these changes that I had in mind, I really wanted to run the Heart of Shadowdark as written, and really tried. I was interested in the torch timers and the spell checks, and wondering how those all fit in Arden Vul. So the first thing I did was I created subcultures for the human ancestry that sort of replaced like half-orcs and stuff, because they don't really exist in this game. And as far as changes to classes goes, I gave fighters the Mighty Deeds ability from DCC, which lets them do kind of cool abilities on a decent die roll and adds to damage. And I also allowed the Bard, Seer, Channeler, Druid, and Witch as optional classes for this game. Because this was an open table game and sessions would be 3 hours, I also made it so fighters kind of ascertain enemy threats really easily. I would allow thieves and the like to auto-detect secret doors as long as they took the time, and wizards to be able to touch items to determine whether or not they're magical. You still got to detect magic on the properties, and I let clerics kind of know way more knowledge about demons and rites and rituals and that kind of stuff in the lore of the, at least in the religious context. Because my limited experience with Shadowdark beforehand, I realized the power of luck and how donating luck to spellcasters and stuff like that kept happening, so I thought maybe having a class that's sort of dedicated to that might show a useful option for specialization. Like a pure support class. Besides that, I really wanted to play Shadowdark as written, as it's intended, before I want to modify anything like that. I just kind of flagged these things during my prep that definitely needed to get added. Just like because this is an open table game, I knew I wanted to have downtime rules, you know, going back to that history segment, and I knew I wanted people to be reading books, so I generated a bunch of rules for that as well. And I knew that roster play would come into play because of folks being on downtime, so I kind of gave some thought to that as well. Fortunately, I already had a pretty good set of downtime rules to use. They were based off another lad's open table game that was Worlds Without Number. And it largely assumed that you would succeed at your tasks in downtime. This way we don't have to play through all those actions in downtime. We can kind of just say we're committing to doing this. Oh, but I definitely changed the carousing rules from Shadowdark to a different version, one that's in line with these other rules. I just didn't like the idea of like taverns getting burned down and stuff from the Shadowdark carousing. I much prefer my own personal carousing tables. And a lot of people play Wolves Upon the Coast on the server that I ran this on. In case you don't know, that game has a really cool level up mechanic that's about boasting and swearing to do great things and getting your level ups that way, but then you're on the hook to do these great things. I thought that would be just absolutely perfect for this game. And I could just reflavor them as like great oaths. And, you know, going back to that, again, that sort of history, the uncaring world theory, I knew that I only wanted to give XP for monsters and treasure like OSE style. I thought that oaths could sort of supplement maybe people who play infrequent and want to level and sort of have a quasi level up ability. And then I took the inverse of oaths and swearing to do a great deed for power, instead just asking for power from like the warlock tables from Shadowdark, like in the Cursed Scrolls, I forget which one. And so instead of having warlock characters, anyone could do a pact, but then you're on the hook for whatever this patron says and does, and they could be varying degrees of difficulty, and they were just really interesting. And failing to fulfill your side of the pacts or your oaths would have a terrible price. Okay, and then the final thing in that document was sort of like the lore of the world and hooks and things like that. Once again, going back to the history and theme, I knew that I was going to give my players nothing after a certain point, but in order for people to be sort of invested and portray the characters with some worldly conviction, they have to have some context. So I gave everyone a brief, you know, what your character would know. And I gave them a couple hooks to get them started for adventuring, as well as sort of some general, hey, in the dungeon, you've heard of these areas. Now, you don't know what occupies these areas, but you've heard these names before. As far as what software tools I was going to use for running this game, this is literally my third giant West March campaign. You know, I've ran a DCC one in the Fever Swamps before. I ran a Forbidden Lands one before. I definitely knew that how to set up the Discord part. But as far as the VTT goes for this one, instead of using my Roll20 or Foundry, I was just going to use Google Sheets and Miro. Again, this goes back to 3D6 down the line. They're the lads who kind of pioneered using Miro for player drawing maps, and I saw that and I was like, I need this in my game. I knew that the Discord would need a game info channel, a channel dedicated for just the sessions and wherever the sessions go, a general chat channel, sort of like a thread or journals part for posting, another one for where the roles are going to show up on the screen, as well as roles for myself, the private GM ones. In a respectable graveyard, Halls of Honor Dead, which I totally stole from the Wolves campaign as well. And along the way, I would also create some perchance generators for NPCs. Recruiting for this game was pretty much entirely done on the Discord servers that I'm a part of. I would link to the Google slideshow trailer that I would make for the game. I would link to the Discord where the game's happening, as well as sort of the basic assumptions. I would also flag the house rules that we're doing, as well as the time zone generalities. So this is source dude, just trust me. But I put a lot of effort into my recruiting posts, even though they probably don't work super well. But I just want someone's first experience seeing the type of game that I run to see something that's I wanted something that shows, oh my god, this guy did a lot of work to get this game off the ground. I want to rise to that occasion. Because I just believe that's the right soil that you need to give to a campaign like this that's open table for people to stick around and become regulars. So how exactly did I prep Arden Vul? It's a great question. I spent November of last year through basically January just reading the book, trying to get a large impression of the overall world and beginning to wrap my head around it at a very high level, while also listening to the amazing 3D6 Down the Line's game of it. I mean, you have been watching that, right? You absolutely should. It's freaking banging. Oh, and also about the amount of time I spent reading this game. You absolutely do not need that amount of time to prep this thing. Just for personal reasons, I had a few months of time to kill, so it was perfect. I generally focus my efforts on the things that I think the PCs would encounter first, so I really focused on floors 3, 2, and 1, and the surface level, because, at the time, level 5 seems so far away. There's plenty of time to get to that stuff. And I just want to flag, wrong. Completely wrong. It's unfortunately the case. To actually its benefit, but at its peril for prep, Arden Vul is just so positively interlinked across the different levels and its context that its web of cross-referentiality just makes it like a massive elephant to get started. There's no good starting point. You're just gonna have to start eating. I say this in general terms because, for example, you might hear there's this basement level that's a really good starting part of the dungeon for people and for players to get started. Well, there's also an NPC in that basement who is a former adventurer, and not just a former adventurer, but a former polemark of Adrianic's expedition, which is this legendary expedition 250 years ago from the game start that got annihilated by these trolls. And the homie's embroiled in some kind of spiritual love triangle, so you can kind of just play off that this guy is crazy and insane from all the years and the torment and going mad and this kind of drama and stuff. But all this information is kind of buried in 3 random room descriptions, I think, in the game. So, it's hard. And I only bring this up as a single example. There's just numerous points in Arden Vul where this is going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. Just as a GM, you can always just tell your players, hey, by the way, I kind of goofed on the knowledge of that guy, and I'm really sorry about that. So I'm just going to go ahead and add some fresh crow rations to eat on my GM character sheet. All right, and I don't want to just leave you with just get good. Obviously, just draw the rest of the owl. Here's some actual practical advice. What to actually prepare for. Definitely familiarize yourself with the cliffs. Understand how that stuff works. Understand where the access points are. And this should probably go in a different part of the video, but also realize that there should be a bridge about a mile north of Gosterwick that splits over the river that allows people to go to the the short stair or the long stair. Yeah, but anyways, familiarize yourself with the cliffs, the surface of the city, where the Inn of the Broken Head is. Focus on the pyramid, its dynamics, how the puzzle of it works, how that opens. Maybe familiarize yourself a little bit with the start of the Well of Light. Maybe the rumors of this basement area as well. They're all good ideas, but just be prepared that none of this stuff will save you. You're just going to have to do your best. In general, I would put my scheduled availability and my session schedule out about 2 weeks ahead of whatever the date was. I just don't subscribe to the belief that players should schedule sessions when there's only just one GM to a campaign, because I'm the bottleneck. If I'm not available, they can't play. What's the point of scheduling if I'm not available? So I just post my time and my slots available effectively, kind of like a professor's office hours. It was all first come, first serve. I never made any hard rule about making new players have priority. I've done that in the past. In this one, I just relied entirely on the group to organize around that. If they want new players, then they should prioritize new players. Again, this was such a radical departure from my regular, let's be welcoming, let's have everybody come join the game, hunky-dory, I'll do all the work to help really onboard people. I really just, I took that uncaring world to heart and decided to apply it to my scheduling parts as well. Each session was part of the day in the calendar in-game. If your character was still in that week downtime, because downtime takes 7 days, then you are unavailable. Play a backup character, and if you already have at least 3 characters and you still want to play, well, that's actually where I put my foot down, because, come on, you should not have more than 3. If you're in a situation where you have 3 characters and they're all log jammed up and you still can't play, you know what, take a break. Let someone else hop in. Yep, and I just accepted the neutrality of this campaign, and it will last as long as it was going to last. If it would flounder, it would flounder. The campaign would go on until no one signed up anymore. That was sort of the general idea when I got started. If other people wanted to start scheduling open table games to conflict with my schedule and people went to those other games, then awesome. That's great. More people are playing games they want to play. I will just keep going until no one signed up anymore, and then we'll just say, good game. Okay, and now we get to the part that's actually about the daily prep for each of these games and what I would do for each individual session. It really helps to have 4 monitors doing this stuff. Literally, 1 for Discord, as you can see, 1 for the PDFs and spreadsheets, and that's literally 4 copies of the rules open. Yeah, I'm not even kidding. You need multiple copies of the rules open because of various exits to different floors. You might have a monster that you need to be looking up in a different part of the book. It might have a magic item reference somewhere, so you need that. And then you also need the actual room description that you're in. Or, even a flagging the random encounter table. You need another monitor, just absolutely dedicated to Miro because it's so big and it's going to get recorded, and you absolutely need to have that looking up at all times. Oh, and of course, and on the other monitor, you have nothing but Discord open, so you can have your roles channel open, your voice comms open, so you can see people's faces, because we, despite recording without cameras, we do play with cameras on, internet data permitting. And then the last monitor is doing double duty. Half of it is set up with all the PDFs of the maps of Arden Vul. So this way I can have the room descriptions and the actual maps themselves open for trying to relay descriptions for different rooms and stuff like that. And then the top part of that monitor is nothing but OBS, is actually doing the proper recording and making sure audios are coming through, actually hit recording and all that kind of stuff, so nothing gets funky along the way. Speaking of funky, have you just seen this Miro board that we were using this whole campaign? It lasted us through the entire thing. It was absolutely incredible, despite it probably burning down a general hectare a minute of Amazon rainforest just for hosting it. Okay, so before we get into what I would prep for each session, let's just talk about what the players were doing this whole campaign. They are writing in the planning channel, making threads, hundreds of messages long, genuinely. The stuff they were getting into for planning was unreal, going over contingencies and things like that. On my side, I really would just do my best to roll encounters ahead of time, and that's kind of was most of my prep. I really enjoy seeing when encounters occur in game, so I don't do that ahead of time, but I do like knowing what is, coming down the pipe. I simply run the game that I would enjoy the most as a player. And as a player, I hate it when GM just goes, "Oh, looks like you," rolls dice sounds. "You walked into a gelatinous cube," and you're like, "Whoa, hang on, wait a minute. Why didn't you tell me that the halls were suspiciously clean and there's a smell of bleach or something?" Like, totally fair to be ambushed, especially by, like, silent undead and all that kind of stuff. Totally fine, but when there's, like, clear and present signs of a creature's lair, I want to hear it. I want to see it. Or at least, like, have a chance to. So a lot of my prep was focused on trying to make the world real. One way I did that was making sure that all my NPCs had names, so I'd have name generators going and stuff like that. The other one I would spawn random 0-level townsfolk, and at the end of each month I would kind of level them up or see if they die and that kind of stuff, or join a different party or got captured, so the world just kept kind of cycling through different adventures representing that kind of stuff. And then also I would have a massive faction turn with all the different factions going on. I thought I was using my own system, but then someone pointed out that my system was a lot like Karen 2nd edition system, and lo and behold, it turns out we both basically arrived at the same kind of idea of, like, listen, we don't need something like Kevin Crawford's or without number faction system resolution. We just need kind of a d6 and we can wing it. But a crucial step of making faction turns feel real and including this into my prep is that I would do faction turns for the month in advance, and then I would roll for the weeks for when these results would trigger. This way I could foreshadow things. I can have portents, and players could even get proactive and possibly change. So my factions ended up, or like my faction results ended up being, hey, if the PCs do nothing, this is what happens. So my brain was just always occupied with, hey, how can I make this world look dynamic based on these random encounter rolls, based on what's upcoming in the dungeon, what the factions are talking about, what they're thinking about, in addition to whatever the players are doing. A very fun side effect of taking this little bit of time to prep these types of things and maybe generate a couple names if it was like a Beastman Banda and that kind of stuff, everything felt very organic. And because players couldn't tell what was a counterfeit name by me versus what was actually in the dungeon, they were always hesitant to treat NPCs as disposable. Now we get to some of the favorite parts and best moments of this whole campaign that I want to reflect on. These were also pulled by some of my players as well. They really liked the cozy sessions that were smaller than the 6 people maximum. They were 3 or 4 people total, far more explorational, far more roleplay focused, maybe even like dungeon puzzle solving like someone's tomb. And specifically I'm thinking of when Steve and Meg's characters solved Minas the Logothete's puzzle, or Logothet's. That was awesome. Oh my god, thinking about the sheer number of dramatic moments in this campaign, also the Venn diagram of dramatic moments, also containing Sister Julia pulling out like the most clutchest rolls imaginable, is basically a circle. Lauren's character, Sister Julia, burning Arcanum in her hand, turning the Wraith of Julia and Grex, saving everybody, I think still would be incredible. That's forever burned into the memory. The amazing quest and oaths to recover Nightwind after a TPK and the Great Lizard Folk War. That entire like first arc of the campaign was just incredible, frankly. Then we had the insane throne heist with the flesh golems that comes to mind, or like the liberation of the Tower of Scrutiny, or rescuing Sister Julia from the Heketi prison. This whole game was just spattered with just absolutely incredible moments. And because I really just had such a hands-off in the scheduling and planning, I never really saw who was kind of signed up and stuff until I sat down a couple minutes before the session. I would get these really fun, surprising moments like, oh, it's going to be a smaller session today. Guess we're going to do more cozy RP stuff. Or, oh my god, everyone's here and they brought their best characters. It's a straight-up Avengers level quest today, isn't it? Yeah, I think that like the troop-based play strategy layer of this game was perfect. A big part of this game was also politics and factions, despite being only 3-hour sessions and focusing mostly on the dungeon and adventuring, because a lot of the stuff ended up going into downtime and being done asymmetrically. A big problem the party had was securing new start locations that were considered safe, both for just XP and for starting sessions. and that often required making deals and treaties with different factions in the dungeon. Now, the very first one that comes up would be like the Broken Head Inn on the surface of Arden Vul, but then they were dealing with how to get in with the trolls or the goblins, and dealing with all of that stuff, being nickeled and dimed by the goblins all the time, trying to go to the lifts, knowing that they need their rental space so they don't piss off the Goblin King and they just pay the money, or dealing with the dragon. And I still remember making Ed's halfling character have to like pick which one gets killed because they never warned the dragon that they were going to attack the Setites on the surface. Harenby did all this stuff with the Thieves Guild, and even getting in contact with the Drome and dealing with Korbal Khan and becoming like this bard spy alchemical dragon ghost hybrid thing. It was awesome. And also I really enjoyed Casper. One of the players had to take a break from the game because of travel and things like that, and he talked it over with me and thought that he would kind of like splinter off part of the Vulgarians with him and take over and do this side thing. And so it was kind of cool to have this sort of like evil Vulgarian twist and betrayal in the game as well. That was fun for the players to find out. Obviously there was a bunch of stuff with mercenaries and dealing with the war between the brother and sister Basilians of the Vale as well. All the stuff was going on in the background as well as the foreground. Because I still remember in the very early sessions of the game when we had access to the Broken Head Inn, if you didn't downtime to travel there for safety, you would start in Gosriwick instead of the inn, which meant that some people got robbed before because, it was just genuinely unsafe to travel between there. And that kind of demand, there was just so much fun to finally solve and switch over. And so the late games when we're saying, the standard Vulgaris opening of going through a teleporting rug into the Goblin territory, it's like, yeah, seems like we trivialized the dungeon, but at the same time, we made so much progress and so much headwind, or we made so much progress in the face of so much headwind that it was really rewarding, in my opinion. And why would I ever fight that or try to take it away from them? They earned it. Okay, now we get to the part where I want to talk about running Shadowdark and what that was like. And I just want to say, Shadowdark absolutely punches above its weight. It is an incredible system. It's very fun and robust. It is not just for light campaigns. It is absolutely able to withstand, the proof is in the pudding here. This game somehow survived 150 plus sessions. That's incredible. I didn't realize at the time when I went to choose Shadowdark how actually heroic Shadowdark still is, despite what it says on the tin. It's very, very much like a D&D power level, especially at the higher levels. It is extremely wizards rule. It's very magic user dominant. Also, the luck thing that I spoke about earlier with the use of bards and seers for luck batteries and luck sharing, it made the game a certain way where there was a lot of, hey, do we have luck? And getting people to bring around and just have luck. So rather than sharing luck as players, we would just carry around luck batteries. So the idea of having that sort of support luck-giving character was true, but it felt more like a tax than something good. Just something to be aware of. The entire group pretty much universally agrees that thieves in Shadowdark need a boost. The D4 hit die just doesn't really cut the mustard. They are far and away the most dead class than everyone else. I just genuinely, I don't know. I think that certain GMs, I just think that other GMs maybe allow ambushes on a more frequent basis than I did. So the rest of their value really came into auto-detecting secret doors or that stuff. In the first few sessions, you can see me trying to do always-on initiative, going down the horn, trying to get stuff. I think with an open table and on Discord, that just was not the way to do things, and that's why I pivoted off of that to more of a group-based always-on initiative. I found that was much better when we were kind of, using the game parlance, moving as one, and we can keep things in our 3-hour session interval that much better. It does come at the expense that not everyone gets to chime in. But you get the added benefit though that we kind of keep the camera on the thing that's most interesting. So for example, if a thief is running ahead, scouting, something like that, we can kind of just stay with them and follow their moves while the rest of the party waits, as long as everyone's cool with that. And yeah, that just worked much better for us. Now the IRL torch timer thing, that's I don't know, man. I still call it a gimmick. I still think it's a gimmick. I know that was actually like an anchor part of the game design. Maybe the game was designed in physical space around like a convention table. That makes a lot of sense to me. If you had a physical thing, I don't know. You saw the picture of having all of these monitors. I don't know where I would put the timer in. I don't see the space. Maybe it's on my phone or something. It's too much work to add one extra thing for countdown when you're juggling such as this massive dungeon. Tracking, we gave it to the players to largely do. And then, the flip side to the torch timers is that the dungeon is so big. Y'all, if you didn't know this, Arden Vul is big. It's pretty dang big. You would be time passing into stairwells descending 300, 500, 1,000 feet. If you're going that far down, it makes no sense that you would still have a torch by the time you got to the bottom. So I kind of did a sanity check of carefully moving at 30 feet. About 10 rounds is probably a torch timer. So let's just call that. So about every 300 feet of descent, that would be the approximate torch. I think I actually ended up rolling down to 250, just because I think some of the key stairwells were 250, so I would just round it up rather than being like, oh, by the way, you have 55 minutes gone of your torch. That's not for me. I'd rather just say, hey, let's do the whole torch and move on. The other thing that I kind of was running into was just this whole time passing thing in general. Now, I mentioned the size of the dungeon, but the other side is that my general ruling and adherence for when I'm GMing is I let folks just take the time to avoid unnecessary rolls. So like if, for example, I go by the 3 T's, times, tools, and training, if you have all 3, just spend the 10 minutes and you can pick the lock and stuff like that, right? As long as these criteria are met. If you only have 1 criteria, you can't do it. If you have 2, let's go ahead and roll and see. So I just never felt like I don't know, if I followed the rules as is, then all the hour-long timers would then decrement by 10 minutes, and then I would roll a 50-50 encounter check for the time. I don't know, it just didn't seem like Shadowdark really matched with that with my playstyle, and maybe that's just a me problem and not a rules problem, but I don't know, just be aware. And I know I said like wizards are super dominant, but I'm just going to go back to this real quick. Wizards are insane in Shadowdark. They'll just roll a 1. And, that's true, but I think luck severely mitigates that. So there's this weird dynamic where wizards just constantly need luck so they can cast their best spells so they don't fail them. And like, there's just a big difference in roll to cast systems than your standard Vancian systems, because being able to lob like 100 fireballs, or, seriously, like 5 fireballs, when normally in the game at this level, you'd be able to do 1 for the whole session, and that's it. It's a very significant difference. It's a very different kind of game. And, don't even get me started on being able to plan for magic circles and stuff like that, and being able to magic circle around undead when you're opening sarcophagus. It's pretty strong. But I reward it. I allow them to do proper planning and do that kind of stuff, because there's always random encounters. My players would plan so much, and they were so good at planning and coming up with great strategies involving all these types of things. They were always safest when things were going according to plan, but they never lost sight of the deadliness of Shadowdark at all. They always know that they were 1 failed spell away, or a few bad random encounter rolls away from their best laid plans just completely blowing up in their face, or some sort of key assumption about maybe a monster immunity or ability to teleport or fly or something like that might be a problem. Now, I would make adjustments through the campaign. No campaign is ever perfect. Don't let anyone think you can perfect a campaign. The only perfect campaign is the one that's not actually being run. It's still in your head. But I definitely regret never pivoting entirely off of 1-to-1 time. I just found that 1-to-1 time I run games too frequently for it to make sense. One additional problem that I did not anticipate, and I frankly couldn't even get a good answer even to the end of the campaign, was the quantum chest problem, where, treasure containers like chests, they can carry multiple slots, right? Especially for a game that's not designed around slot-based stuff. It might have 10,000 coins, it might have 200 coins, and so for a player with slot-based inventory, you're much better off just carrying the chest, and but never opening it in case you don't have enough slots. So it's just always like this really weird problem. Couldn't find a good answer to. It's probably incumbent on the GM in slot-based systems to convert your campaign to be slot-based for the treasure. But holy hell, y'all, this game has like 1,000+ rooms. I'm not going to go through and identify the containers of treasure and ensure that kind of compliance. I'm just not going to do that. But good luck. Maybe someone can find an answer for this in their game that's satisfactory and share it. Oh, I was also disappointed in my escape the dungeon roll, which you'll definitely hear throughout the game when we have to use it. I just never really figured out a way that's better. I think group-based was wrong. That was the wrong approach. Everyone should just roll individually. Yeah, it's probably what I should have done first. Maybe simplify it as well. Oh, and I can't believe this is just coming up now, but really, you gotta do something about oil flasks. Oil flasks, incredible. I probably would make naphtha flasks something you could craft with alchemical reagents that you could find in the dungeon, but just no more normal flaming flasks for sure. They have to be made or procured in a particular way. I think my enduring wounds and stuff like that was pretty good, although I still have misgivings about returning from the dead. Maybe I should have just not allowed returning from the dead at all, but there's quite a few items in the game that allow it, and maybe it's good. As you can see, I'm extremely confident in this last one here on what I would do differently. Sorry. Okay, now, what I would do differently, or like what would I remix? I probably should have just gone with Worlds Without Number. Considering how this game traversed into a much more granular game, I probably should have just picked the rule set that is a little bit more granular, with a formalized skill system, formalized crafting system, that kind of stuff. I even could have ported in like the court system from the One Ring, using it modified for Worlds Without Number for dealing with the court parts of Arden Vul. That would have been really fun. Also, I think that, you know, in a very nerdy world building level, I still think that there's something really cool about having various spellcasting types, like one being a spell point type caster and one being a Bansheean type caster to represent ones who went to the colleges in the capital versus not, and like really that kind of level of stuff. But you know, I didn't. But if I were going to go back to Shadowdark and what I would actually change, these are the things that I think are absolutely essential. So first off, I think that adventure block format I was talking about earlier definitely needs to come in. 3 sessions is 1 month in game. Each player will get 3 actions, one of which is to go on adventure. I would tweak the ancestries that I make backgrounds be explicitly practical. No more of like the I'm wanted or that kind of stuff. They have a background. They give you a sort of skill kind of domain area. So it's relatively easy to know. I would also limit luck. I would definitely ban the Bard and Seer and the extra classes. I don't think they're necessary. I would cap everything to be kind of 1 luck per session, with a few exceptions, like based on spells, or for example, the following things for the Thief class that I would change. So for the Thief, I would give it a d6 hit die. I would remove the backstab ambush thing, just because it never comes up. I would rather just give them the Bard use magic ability, and also the ability to recover luck when they fail a skill test. I think that would be really fun. As far as combat changes, I would also remove the patch of the Mighty Deeds from fighters. I know that's like a crazy take, but I think I would rather have it so that anyone can flourish when you roll 5 or more above the armor class, kind of like from Knave. And I think that could be kind of in lieu of a Mighty Deed, just have that as the Mighty Deed, so this way thieves can kind of do that as well. For magic user treasure and stuff, I definitely would have just gotten rid of all the spell books and make gathering spells much more difficult and just limit things to just scrolls and things on people. As far as tracking light goes, I would definitely track light in just OSE turns. I would just rip the band-aid off. I would no longer do the timer. I also would experiment with mapping and having designated mapping supplies take a slot on the character. And so if they don't make it out, then we will just delete that part of the map that you made and revert it. But that might be a little too harsh. I would definitely keep the XP. My entire hands-off approach like this was a great success. Highly recommend you try it. Oaths were also like extremely fun and rewarding, but I think I probably would make oaths even more significant. Like each oath is way more considerable, even your very first one. Okay, and now some bits about the actual Arden Vul lore and the dungeon that I would remix. I would keep my change of the cavemen on the stairs being mutated or weird beastmen offshoots. I think that was really fun. If you didn't want to go that route, I would probably just replace him with kobolds. I would definitely remix Kobold Khan. He's already using a sobriquet for a name. He's a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude. And I would pretend that he's Rudishvin, and he needs to collect technology and things of his ancient race in order to protect him or save his people, that kind of angle. I was never too happy with the goblins, how they're presented in the game. Specifically in the terms of like the faction pyramid, because they seem like the obvious example players want to party with. You know, especially compared to like the halflings, the Setites, or even the beastmen. They're definitely the least bad option. Yeah, so like just make them vile, like make them like cannibals, slavers, just absolutely wild, untrustworthy little goblins. But also speaking of goblins, I think I would have done a lot more with language and make Goblin the lingua franca of the halls. So the idea that you come across someone who speaks Arcandine in the halls is kind of special. They're like, wait, we can talk like with our normal language, that kind of stuff. I think it would be very fun. When Veramani want to talk to people, if they know they don't know Veramani, they will just instantly go to Goblin. Assuming they even know Goblin, they may just only know Veramani. That kind of stuff. I would also limit players' access to the Mythic language, because so much of the dungeon and books and things are written in Mythic. It'd be fun to discover that through play and become better experts at it. Especially with some kind of like language progression, downtime kind of, you know, learning thing, because there's plenty of languages to learn, like the secret languages of the priests, Rudishvin, Veramani. Like there's so many opportunities in this campaign. It'd be very fun. I would have liked the idea that formal written promises and stuff are only valid between factions if they are written and signed, you know, and approved in Veramani. Otherwise, they're just, you know, memorandums of understanding rather than carrying the weight of law. Because anything approved with Veramani, that means the Veramani could kind of like interdict and, you know, enforce. Oh, also for NPCs, I think it would be fun if Crass had a polymorph like elf persona or something like that he could be found either in Gosterwick or kind of walking around. I think that'd be very fun. And then like another major change I would do would be figuring out Garelad and what to do with Garelad, because his motivations as written is like he wants to be left alone. Then he spends all this time torturing people, which doesn't really make sense, because if I was a guy who wanted to be left alone, I would not be spending 75% of my waking hours torturing people. That just doesn't really make sense to me. So Garelad is going to go by King Gerko, and King Gerko is in love with Dino, the mother of the Beastmen. And like, of course, Dino has like absolutely no interest whatsoever in Garelad. So like Garelad's just trying to, you know, desperately get her attention, but it's just completely fruitless. And you know, like Isocritus, the wizard in the library that he's renting from Gerko, he probably remembers it's King Garelad and thinks that this guy's just going completely insane and he just needs to get this information and get the hell out of here. So that might be a fun little dynamic. And if he did leave, I would probably just throw him and his lot with Tick and Thane. I think both the Burdock's Vale type enemy adventuring groups and even like Tick and Thane himself could be fleshed out a lot more for this campaign to be a little more dynamic. But like, just keep things on Tick and Thane and Isocritus. Tick and Thane is said to have captured baboons and things, so maybe he's on the surface, but I kind of really do like this idea that Isocritus and Tick and Thane have some sort of like some kind of baboon trafficking thing. And now I know Richard has been trying to publish all of these extra little additions of sites around the Vale to go along with Arden Vul. Like there's like the Ibis Roost, which I ran and was really fun. But I also threw in a cult compound in Gosterwick. I never got around to doing these ones, but I thought some extra expansion areas from a couple teleporters, especially in the Nether Reaches, would have been really fun. And I really am interested in whatever this Halls of Horror stuff that Richard has plans for this dungeon. I think that'd be really fun, given that based on a couple little scripts here of where Horus is, you know, his body's in the astral plane. So maybe some kind of like weird Diablo Arcane Sanctuary vibes. Okay, so thanks so much for watching this video and making it this far to the very end. I really hope you appreciate hearing my thoughts on Arden Vul, Shadowdark, and kind of how to run an open, or how I ran an open table campaign. I really do hope that you pick up a copy of Arden Vul if you haven't already. And you know, maybe you're already busy prepping it, and I would love to hear about your own campaign with it and your own trials. As far as my future projects go, I'm definitely going to step away from Shadowdark and Arden Vul for the foreseeable future. I'm going to enjoy just kind of a break for a little bit of a hiatus, maybe play some BattleTech until the new year, and where I'm rolling up my sleeves to start a Grand Mouse Rider campaign. And in this Mouse Rider game, I'm going to be incorporating players running sort of like a war game Kriegspiel element on top. I want to have competing player faction groups going on adventure and using grand adventure blocks with winter phases and aging mechanics and legacy stuff. I'm not going to be taking it easy in 2025.